Hey, it's Karina Reichman, and you are listening to Comes a Time with Oteil Burbridge and Mike Fenoya. If you're digging the podcast, do these guys a favor and review and subscribe. It means a lot. Be sure to follow the pod on social media, YouTube, and if you're joining for bonus episodes and exclusive content, go to patreon.com/comesatimepod and get on the bus. And now, here's Mike and Oteil.
What's up, good people? This is Oteil coming to you from the Comes a Time podcast. I am out in Petaluma, California, doing some secret recording. I can't even tell you what it's about yet, but it's really cool and can't wait for everyone to hear it. This week's guest is going to be a very dear, very old friend of mine named Elizabeth Lott. We actually went to church together in Birmingham, Alabama, like 20 some years ago. Oh my God, the time went by really fast. Anyway, she, I think, is probably the first female Baptist pastor in New Orleans, maybe in all of Louisiana. But she recently left the church, and that's what we are going to talk about. Because she's still very much a believer, I think. But, you know, the whole thing just, she was like, where is this going? So I was really excited to have this conversation with her on a podcast and have it be recorded and put it out there to everyone. And it was a really good one. We haven't seen each other for so long. And she just moved to Macon, Georgia. So I told her I got all kinds of good Allman Brothers folks out there to connect her with. And she texted me that after being really tired, they went and treated themselves to some H&H. I was like, nah, you're in the right spot. So I hope you guys really enjoy this conversation. And you can get us all on all the podcast platforms. Make sure and check out our YouTube page. Comes the Time Podcast YouTube page is very easy to find. Go to Patreon. We got some other stuff for you there. Patreon.com/Comes a Time Pod. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. We love you. Can't wait for you to hear this new music. Peace. $222. See, it's happening again.
That's awesome. It does happen whenever we talk, I think.
It happens for everybody. They miss it most of the time. They're not looking.
I've been seeing a lot of 333 as we prepare for this move. So I'm really trying to hold on to that. I thought by now I'd be less nervous, but I still feel nervous.
Actually, your mic is still a little loud. Can you turn it down a little bit more?
Can I turn it just away from me more?
Yeah. If you that's good.
Okay.
333 is good. You know, in numerology, you keep adding till you get a single digit, and that's 9, the number of completion.
Yeah.
So you could come to, and Macon, it's cosmic, but we'll get into that in a minute. So I know we took a little more time last time. I think
we talked for 2.5 hours when we tried this before.
I really want to. Things are moving fast right now, so we got to move people faster. So I'm going to give a lot of this in the intro, you know, and that I do want to touch on, though, why you left. Were you the first woman pastor in Louisiana or New Orleans?
I was not the first of any denomination. And there was a rabbi here too. So there were pastors in other traditions like Episcopal, Methodist, Reform Judaism. Yeah. But I think I was the first female Baptist pastor in Louisiana.
There you go. So sad, the Free Baptists. We were so forward thinking once upon a time. Revolutionary, renegades.
Well, and then, but when the revolution leads to an institution, then a lot of the forward thinking stops and it just becomes that self-preservation. So maybe that's not what we're talking about, but
No,
that's
it's actually exactly what we're talking about, because I think that's what happens with any kind of bureaucracy that's set up, is that it then shifts to preserving the bureaucracy and being about the health and growth of the bureaucracy and not what the bureaucracy was set up to serve.
That's right.
And the 12-step program deftly avoided that by making a bureaucracy impossible.
Mm.
And so it always happens. What is it? Jeffrey Kripal calls it the institutionalization of a charismatic figure. But kind of what I want to talk about is, well, first of all, before we get there, I do want you to touch on why you left the church personally.
So I worked in churches for 25 years and was a senior pastor in this role where it was supposed to be that I'm standing on the shoulders of all these other women who couldn't get through the stained glass ceiling and all of that. And I think it was something about sort of the revolutions that were starting in our country, like Black Lives Matter, Ferguson, when that was going on. Yeah. I started feeling this itch of why even these nice white people, I've been thinking about Dr. King's letter from Birmingham, right? About those good white people who think they're doing good, are still doing nothing. And so I started getting this real burning of, okay, so if we're going to do this, if we're going to say we follow this revolutionary radical man, then we need to be revolutionary and radical. And I kept pursuing that and pushing that line, and started to feel the suffocation of the institution. It's no one person's fault, but I started to feel like the whole institution of church, even progressive and out there and all of those things that we were, and as much experimentation as they let me do, there was still that sense of like they were letting me do it. I was still on a leash of some sort. There were still parameters. And I think my body knew that it was too small for me before my mind and my heart caught up. And so I'm still kind of in recovery from that part, like the healing of bringing all those things back into sync again. It just started to feel too small, and it started to feel like even the radical progressive ones, whatever, that are pushing the envelope, are still about brick and mortar, and we've got to continue to exist. This needs to be here for the next generation. And I felt like, what is the it? Just the building? This worship style? What is the it that we're preserving? And if it isn't radical revolutionary love that's completely transforming all of creation, including ourselves, then like, what is it? So
and that's a dangerous thing.
Yeah,
it's a thing that can get you killed.
For sure. I mean, that's the heart of Christianity, is that there was this guy who was pursuing radical love in such a way that it was a threat to empire, and the empire killed him.
Ta-da!
So I started preaching that,
so
and
beautifully summed up.
Maybe it wasn't the most palatable message, but the more I preached it, the more I believed it. And the more I preached it, the more I believed it was not a message meant exclusively for one group of people. And the more I preached it, the more I felt like church was never meant to exist in the first place.
Yeah, well, I think it was meant to exist, but it wasn't meant to be what Christianity, and actually Christianity is not what it was meant to be.
Yeah, and maybe that's fair. Maybe church as the sense of a community of people coming together, like that's not the problem in and of itself. But
well, even it being completely wrong and off the mark, it's meant to be, because this whole thing being completely wrong and off the mark is to prove it to us. That's why God says to the devil in the story, "You're on." The devil says, "I'm not serving these stinky, not for shit ape people. No way. In fact, I bet I can get them to follow me and not you." And God goes, "Okay. That sounds cruel, but it's really all of us proving to ourselves that this is not the way." Church, capitalism, a republic, whatever, any kind of thing that we build, that ain't it. It's this verb, love, to
Yeah.
love radically, which is a dangerous thing to all bureaucracies.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when our fidelity is to that thing that has been built and it's no longer to love, then our desires and goals are in competition.
And you'll kill for it. That's why I can never pledge allegiance to a flag. I can never pledge allegiance to a group as a group, not even black people who sold us here. Let's not forget, Cain killed Abel. I don't give a shit if it's everybody's white and everybody's black, or everybody's black. We have all the exact same problems. The Bible actually doesn't change one bit if everybody is black. It doesn't change one bit.
Well, I mean, and we jump so fast into like right in the middle. We're just deep in. I haven't talked to you in like 6 months, and here we are. I mean, you see it in Northern Ireland. Maybe I've told you this story before, that there was a woman in my last church who works with kids from Northern Ireland and from Israel and Palestine. So they bring together Catholic and Protestant kids from Northern Ireland, bring them to the US and do this 2-week kind of intensive service and community and whatever. And they're all teenagers, because the idea is if teenagers can break that cycle, then in their adulthood of leadership, things become different. So I was hanging out with some teenagers a few years back from Northern Ireland who all look exactly the same, and they all sound exactly the same. I'm like, okay, so how do you know that this person's your enemy? Oh, well, if they've got a certain football jersey on, if they're for that team, then I know that they're Catholic. Or if they're for that team, I know they're Protestant. Or if they have a name that's one of these and they rattle off Patrick or Christopher or whatever, then I know they're Catholic and they're not Protestant. So it doesn't, the skin color, the presentation, the whatever, people are forever finding ways to draw the battle lines, to make it us versus them, proving like my way is the purest way, or my way is the truest way, which is really all just about anxiety and fear.
The tribal way. Yeah. It's loyalty to the tribe. That Star Trek where the guys, they come to this 2 guys left on the planet and they're trying to kill each other. And they're both half black and half white. But finally they get them isolated. They've got them both captured. And they're like, stop it. You're the last 2 of your race. Why are you trying to kill each other? It's like, can't you tell the difference? And one guy's black on this side and the other guy's white on that side. And they're just flipped. And it's like, and you never notice it till the end, till they point it out. And it's just like, and then you're like, yeah, this is all bullshit, man. Like, coming up with these that's why Shakespeare would never run out of stuff to write, because it doesn't matter. Colonel Bruce Hampton used to have this joke, and he would say it out of context of anything. We'd be playing the music and he'd just go, I died for my county. See, you get it.
Yeah.
Hatfields and the McCoys, right? Hold on, I gotta get this drink. I left my drink over here.
All right.
It's
well, I mean, I don't know how much you shield yourself from the former president who's on trial for all kinds of stuff right now, but the language that he signals to his followers is, I'm being indicted for you. I'm on trial for you. And it's very much this substitutionary atonement language that they've arrested me to replace you.
But they've known this since Lee Atwater and the Southern Strategy.
Yeah.
When Reagan launched his campaign in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Nobody thought that was interesting. Nobody looked up what happened in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Yeah. Why is this actor from California?
Yeah.
Middle of nowhere.
So, I mean, we've known this. It's all dog whistle. It's all the tribalism. I know because if they're for this team, I know because if I use the substitutionary atonement thing, that they know, they hear that and be like, that's our boy.
That's right.
This Machiavelli Democrat from New York, it's the Frankenstein monster that was the ultimate fruition of the Southern Strategy. It's just beautiful. But I do
you would challenge me to think too, like, okay, so it's real easy to pick on them, And so where am I falling prey to the dog whistles? And
With
where
Obama, that's where
that's
you
right.
fall right
All the
down
hope
into
and the
the hole.
change. I believed in every bit
Hope
of
and
it.
change. He would switch back and forth between Martin Luther King
Mm.
and Midwestern. We're hoping and we're running and we're trying and we're feeling and we're believing and we're, it's just like he just switched back and forth between, and he did the same thing. He did the same thing. I asked my dad, I said, when did you know Obama was full of shit? He goes, Syria.
Wow.
You'll notice the country does this. I love this. This was recent. The news said that we might have to fire on Syria because Syria's airplanes were acting aggressively towards us.
Mm.
And I was like, when were Syrian airplanes in the United States? Oh, we were flying in their country and their airplanes acted aggressive towards us, so we might have to bomb the shit out of them. What the fuck is that?
Yeah.
That's some. See how they got us? Just like, sorry, Nigel and Kavi for cussing. And any of your friends that might have watched this, but see how they got us. See how they have us brainwashed.
Yeah.
Brainwashed. Like they don't have any sovereignty in their own airspace.
Well, and then
That-
I think the really radical push for all of us, for people who say they want to be about capital L love, right? Love that transforms and changes all things and all people, is what are boundaries and borders? Like what is Syrian versus
Yeah.
American? Like what is Protestant versus Catholic? I mean,
That's-
where did the borders stop? And
That's Cain and Abel, Ishmael and Isaac, right?
do you remember, gosh, I don't know, when we were at Covenant, so it would have been right after 9/11, and Suzanne Martin was the one offering prayers of the people that day. So she was a member in the church, amazing organizer and leader and all kinds of things. And in her prayers of the people, she started with, "We pray for our brother Osama."
Ooh, boy, only at our church would that shit
And
have happened.
I have never forgotten that. Just
Yeah,
the chills of that's how she's going to start out.
yeah. Well, Jesus would have said, now it's not, I don't know if I could have done it,
Yeah.
but Jesus would have said, forgive him, Father, he knows not what he does.
Yeah.
That's who we chose to follow. So it's like, hey, get mad at Jesus. Don't get mad at me. If that's how I started my prayer. I heard that Ram Dass had a picture of Trump on his altar along with Neem Karoli Baba and his mama and whoever else. Like that's some deep stuff right there. That's some deep stuff.
Well, that totally makes sense for Ram Dass too, who famously said, "If you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family." That like
And he was no different, I'm sure.
what is what's that place where it pushes you into your own darkness? That what's that place, that button that taps your shadows? That's where the work is.
That's one of my favorite movies is Home for the Holidays. Woo! That is a good one. Robert Downey Jr. and Holly, what's her name? Oh God, Oteil, you should be shot right now. Oh,
It's digging deep.
anyway.
Is that, I don't remember who's in it. Like Holly
Home
Hunter?
for the Holidays. Holly Hunter. Thank
Okay.
you. Holly Hunter and Robert Downey Jr. and the movie Flawless. But I digress. So here's the thing I would like to point out. Two things before we move into the next phase of this, which is that it's time for a new religion.
Mm.
I will say this, and then I'll backtrack. Every religion starts out rejecting the one that it was birthed out of. Okay? And every religion follows the ancient astro myth, which is pagan. So all the revealed religions are pagan. And you could tell because they're either a lunar calendar or a solar calendar. What would we following celestial bodies for? I thought that was astrology. So in 6000 BC, it's the age of Taurus, right? 6 to 4, 4 to 2, 2 to 0. Let me go backwards. 0 to 2 is Pisces, that's right. 2 to 4 is Aries, 4 to 6 is Taurus. Every 2,000 years, the zodiac changes. You will see the bull symbolism everywhere: the Apis bull, the Amen bull, the Minotaur, right, in Greece. And then it changes to Aries. Now, this is the era of rams, lambs, and shepherds. That's where the Hebrew story starts. And then they come out of Taurus, out of Egypt, which is the patriarchal Egypt, not the matriarchal one where they did not have slaves. And then it's rams, lambs, and shepherds. What did the children of Israel do? What did they build that pissed off God when they hadn't got to the promised land
Their
yet?
golden calf?
The golden calf, the baby bull. That's the old, and God says, no, it's Aries now. No more bulls. Well, then we get to the age of Pisces, 2,000 years later. Jesus is, all of his disciples are
No, they're all fishermen. Yeah.
fishermen. He says, I want to make you fishers of men and not fish. His first miracle is the loaves and the
Yeah.
fishes. The
Or the
symbol is
wine,
the
depending on which gospel you're going with.
yeah.
We're
I
still,
like
that's
the
still
wine.
liquid.
I like the wine. I like that he drank and he cussed, but I digress. So now Pisces is over. Pisces is over. It's time for the new religion.
Mm,
That's my question to you. Now you realize your body even told you this is over.
yeah.
This is, what did you say? I feel like I'm curating a museum instead of.
Oh, yeah. I said something about, I mean, that had become my line, is if we're preserving these buildings to be monuments to 20th century white Christianity, then I don't want to be the curator of that museum.
Yeah,
but if we're using these buildings to be like training grounds for revolutionary love, then I'm all about that. And there are a lot of monuments to what was out there.
Yeah, more than anything, because we know that any 3 mega churches in any major city could end hunger in that city. Period. There should be no hungry children, period. I don't care whether they're Christian or not. Put it to bed and I'll join. End it and I will join.
Yeah.
You can even talk some shit that I don't agree with.
Yeah.
But if you end that, if you end hungry children in your city, I'll join. But they won't do it. It's
Well, and
11.
Louisiana has elected somebody who's actively working against that now, and he's supposed to be the voice of the Christian evangelical. And he's one of the first things he did was start slashing resources for kids who need food at school.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
The Bill of Rights said all of men are created equal, with the right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then they wrote slaves right in there. Oh, well, let's just change that, So it was bullshit from the beginning.
Yeah, it was.
All of it. The whole thing was bullshit from the beginning. I wonder why they were compelled to write it correctly. I really do. I think it has something to do with casting spells and spelling.
I would say that they genuinely believed what they said. Like that the idea of women, like,
no, but they didn't.
Women weren't fully human. People of color and enslaved people weren't fully human. They meant each other.
Only because I would agree with you if it wasn't for John Adams and Samuel Adams and the ones who clearly, vociferously, at high volume called out, this is bullshit. You can't say this and do this. And they made the compromise because of money. There was so much money.
Yeah.
And that's what we always do. We always make but we have to. I'm like, no. That presupposes that there's not another alternative. I use this with everybody, whether it's Israel, Palestine, whether it's what. No, don't try to snow me that there's no third way, or third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh way.
Yeah.
You can stay locked in that tribal thing and try to keep making it circle around, but I don't have any choice because of my people.
Yeah.
No. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So, but this leads to Pisces is over. It's over. It's over, folks. I love you. I hope the rapture does come so that it's in time to coincide with the end, because it's now. Now, I think there's a new thing coming. What's that going to be? That's what I think you are spearheading, because now
Oh.
you've left the tomb empty.
You're putting a lot. You're putting a lot on me, or giving me more credit than
Hey,
I deserve too.
no. This is our story now. We're writing this.
So
We are
what age
co-writing this together.
so is Aquarius what comes after
The
Pisces?
water bearer. I just looked
Yeah.
up the legend. It's a little convoluted, but yeah, the water bearer. I can tell you this. The time of the patriarchy is over.
Yeah.
So,
And this is the death rattle that we're feeling right now. Yeah.
oh, they ain't gonna go quiet.
Yeah.
And they've been knowing that the end is near. It's the same with the aliens. I was like, they gave them a time limit 80 years ago and said, you got this long. And now all of a sudden they're coming out. And Chuck Schumer has an amendment, a bipartisan amendment to protect UFO whistleblowers. They always knew they had a certain amount of time. And I think the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians and the mystics, the Kabbalists, the Sufis, and mystics all over the world, in India and everywhere else, Tibet, Africa, they knew there was a certain amount of time before Mama comes back, which is now.
I can't. My brain is just not like pulling information right now the way that it normally would. Maybe it never has, but I'm so in the middle of this move. I'm thinking about like boxes and logistics.
I know, I'm
Um,
sorry.
but I know someone several years ago was talking about people are wringing their hands around the end of church, millennials don't go to church. But what if what we're really feeling is the rise of the mystics? And so the old way is going away because something new is coming up.
Or
And that
something
new way
old is
doesn't
coming
need,
back.
yeah, like I just came from coffee with a friend sitting in a park under all these live oak trees at the corner of Magazine and Napoleon in New Orleans on a perfect day where it's blue skies. And so tell me that's not church. While,
Yeah.
this guy's playing with his dog over here and their kids playing basketball at the other side. So I think some of the rise of what's happening doesn't need institutions and power and money. And that's got to be the most terrifying thing of all, right? Because if everything that you have built relies on people to feed your institution, people to feed your power, people to keep your coffers full, and now people are like, you know what, we can just share a sandwich under a tree.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be going to the church, it's supposed to be going horizontal to each
Yeah.
other, to the least of those. It's not supposed to be going there unless that church is the homeless shelter and the soup kitchen.
Yeah.
Period. For me, like that's it. So, no, it doesn't need a building. In fact, I think the new religion, uh, like Kripal says, the religion of no religion,
Mm,
which could also be on the other side of the coin, the religion of all religions,
yeah. Yeah.
right? Because it's all of us. If we're all one, right? We got this problem where we see the ocean as separate drops.
Yeah.
It's just so cognitively dissonant, or just
Yeah. Like I'm part of the
stupid.
freshwater drop. I'm not part of the saltwater drop. So your ocean's not my ocean.
Yes.
Yeah, I think part of how I began teaching as a result of a professor I had in seminary, Sam Ballantyne, who, if he is still alive, I call his name and say thank you. I know that he has been in hospice care for a degenerative, maybe it was a long brain, anyway, very ill and nearing the end of his life. Sam Ballantyne would talk about the thread that preachers need to find the thread that you might pick it up in one text that's in John or a letter from Paul or something, and you've got to keep following it back across scripture. Because it doesn't just exist in that one place. And so finding those narrative threads, not just across scripture, but across traditions, became much more interesting to me than dogma or talking points or whatever it was that my tradition was big on.
That's what all the mystics have always done.
Yeah.
That's what the Freemasons did. They were like, oh, Jesus, Shango, Apollo, like they were like, Hanuman.
Yeah.
There's this beautiful thing Ram Dass said, Hanuman is Jesus. And I was like, okay, I got to go down this rabbit hole. The monkey god is Jesus. Okay, so Kavi, we have these little stories of the Indian, you know, uh, religious stories.
Yeah.
So there's Rama and Sita, and Ravana is the bad guy, right? And so Sita gets captured, and I think she's held somewhere. And so Hanuman, that's monkey god, is sent basically. And after Ram Dass tells this whole long story, he says basically Hanuman's function is to get to Sita and let Sita know that God has not forgotten about her.
Mm.
That's why Hanuman is Jesus.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, man. I was like, ooh, Ram Dass, you seeing these two things? See how this over here and this over here? See how that's like this? That's my job. That's all I want to do with this podcast. Music is my secondary job. Music is how I fool people into getting here, and it's a really small number right now.
Oh, well, I bet music too is where you get to drop into the oneness. And
yes,
so you experience the thing that doesn't have words.
For sure. I get to speak the universal language. I transcend the Tower of Babel. Yes, I'm not taking anything from that, but it's taken me 60 years to realize, oh, this is what this is what excites me the most. Sure. Hanuman, Jesus, boom. See, do you see? Right? So we can see the oneness. I'm not saying that they're exactly the same. They have to be different. Peanut butter chicken from Ghana is not the same as Penang curry chicken from Thailand.
Right.
Thailand. It's not. They both use peanuts, but I mean, they're different. But they're both chicken.
Yeah, well, and I think about Joseph Campbell and talking about mythology and metaphor and myth, and that of course they're all going to be different if they're pointing towards some kind of capital T truth, right? That it's so then that's when the thread is driving us towards that truth. So it's not about is it a monkey or is it a man or like whatever it is it compelling us and moving us with curiosity toward that thing?
Yeah, toward that thing. And I would like to point this out because this is what I wanted to digress for back before I lost it. In ancient Egypt, God is I-L, O-T-E-I-L, Oteil. God's in my name. Khalil Gibran, K-H-A-L-I-L. In the Hebrews, it was E-L. Micah El, that's Michael, right? We see Elohim. El Shaddai, the breasted one, that's where you see the mother God in there. In Arabic, it's A-L. Allah, Ali, Al-Islam, right? A-L Islam, as opposed to the Nation of Islam. Or say the Nation of Islam, in addition to Al-Islam. There's no vowels in any of those languages, folks. So who is this God El that everyone is worshiping? And why are we all fighting? Right? Cain and Abel will answer that question for you. But I'm just saying. So, moving forward, this is how I see my church, and I'm like with you, and like we'll just have a group at the park having a picnic, and that'll be church. And maybe we'll all decide, we got food at home, we should go give all this food to all the homeless people in this park right now. If we really are going to be about what we came here to talk about, then we should do that first, and then maybe we don't even have to talk. Or we can just visit.
And I think that you're right about that, the action element of it, that even the language around, like, we're pursuing equity and justice, so we're going to make a Department of Diversity and Equity and Inclusion. Like even all the language, might start at some like really good, beautiful point, and then it becomes like another line item for the bureaucracy, right? Like and now we go through the new hire training for the DEI department. But then you also can't just have two people sitting on a bench because it makes them feel warm and fuzzy. Do you know Lama Rod Owens? Does that name mean anything to you?
Mm-mm.
He teacher, meditation teacher, Black guy who is really critical of like sort of hippie white American adaptation of meditation that doesn't ask
Oh,
any
yeah.
action of us.
Yeah.
That, if it allows you to green juice it on a yoga mat, but like be in your enclave and not encounter the other, then what good is it? So I do think that that's the part. How do you mobilize that without some level of organization? And then how do you maintain the organizing without it being taken over by
But
budgets and
I think,
bylaws?
I don't know that you necessarily, I don't know that it's that hard. Because let's take what the little example that we just had. We just said we're going to meet in the park and have a picnic,
Yeah.
right? That's about the amount of organization that it takes. Because from there, it's like Jesus multiplying the loaves and the fishes. He was like, "Hey, we're all here. What do we got here? We got 4 loaves of bread. How many? Okay, can we just bring that? We got here. But what can we do while we're here?"
Yeah.
Right? I bet I don't carry change anymore, except for actually now I keep some actual paper and coin money to give to people because I got off of it
That's
for a
smart.
long
I
time.
never have it. And then I'm always like, I don't even have a granola bar. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, and I felt that a lot when we moved to another neighborhood, and so while the renovation was being done, so we always had to get on the highway, and as soon as you get to get to kids' school, there's like homeless guy, this poor guy in full fatigues with a huge American flag, white, say, "I serve my country, and this is what I got. Can you help me out with a something?" And I was like, man, this country is over, dude, right? So I never had any money. So I got some money to show my children, hey, we got to do
Yeah.
something. We pass this guy every day. We know he's going to be here. If
Yeah.
I don't go get something to give to him, that shows that I truly do not give a crap.
Yeah.
I was just showing them how to give a crap, right? So if we just get everybody to the park, that could be a group text.
Mm,
Be like, who's got change? Who's got food? You
yeah.
know what? How long you been wearing them socks? If it's only been for 2 hours, look at his socks and look, I bet he'd take your socks right off of your feet right now, right?
Yeah.
Like just stuff like that. Do you need those shoes? You can't. What do we got?
And I think I'm still in a place, like I said at the beginning, like I'm still in this place of like recovery and healing from institution and leading within an institution and trying to lead transformation within an institution and feeling like I was slamming my head against a wall. So maybe the cynicism is still kind of winning with me, but there's the part of me that's like, so how do you convince all your neighbors to care about each other when the message that's been pumped into the air for decades, for centuries is you do you, what they do doesn't matter, because then that very quickly becomes, and so you don't have to care about them, which is part of where the message of Christianity went wrong too. Like, are you going to heaven? Great. Your neighbor's not, so stay away.
But here's the thing. In the Bible, we always see the story of a remnant. It's a little teeny group of people.
Yeah.
What was it that started the American Revolution? Was it 13% of the people? It was some really small group that said, okay, I'm in. And I love that idea of the remnant because then I don't have to convince nobody. That's God's job.
Yeah.
What I got to do is get out in that park.
You're right.
And visit. And then they'll be like, wow, what's going on? They're giving away all their food. Dude just took his shoes off and gave it to somebody. Dude took his socks off and gave it to somebody. Like, what's happening? You should really read The Purple Fables by Ingo Swann.
Okay.
And The Master of Harmlessness, which has also got a lot of purple in it. They're two very short books. They deal with this thing where someone just comes and just starts doing the thing. And then everybody's like, hey, does something look strange about this? What are y'all doing? And then they find out, and the curiosity draws them in. And then some people will go, hey, they're crazy. These, just took his shoes off and gave it to a homeless dude. Okay. Like, you know what I mean? It happens like
Yeah.
what did Jesus talk about? The leavening, the yeast
Oh
working
yeah,
its,
being folded in. Yeah.
yeah, the yeast working
Well,
its way through, right?
so one of the stories about Jesus that has been really transformational for me in my own exit from institution or institutional religion, um, is the whole baptism story of Jesus goes out into the wilderness and finds John and wants to be baptized by him there. And I started reading because I was the sort of preacher that would do a lot of reading and study, getting ready for a message. So what was happening out in the wilderness? Why was John baptizing? Because there wasn't that concept of sin like I grew up with, of like we're washing the sins away to accept Jesus our Lord and Savior. Like that's what I was taught. So what it was a baptism for something from something. Well, then you find out like there's ritual cleansing all across Judaism. If you're not a Jew, then maybe you don't know that. And so he could have gone to the temple for this ritual cleaning, but he didn't.
Yeah.
And then there would have been all these wealthy private leaders within the temple who could have even had those in their homes. So he didn't go to their homes for it. So if you're passing all of these other opportunities for this ritual, and now you've gone out to the wild place where some remnant is gathering and some radical movement is happening, then you have to ask, like, why is Jesus going to be baptized into this subversive and submersive experiments, right? Like out in the wild place. Like, why does he want to enter those waters? And they're waters that are causing trouble. And then it always gets me that the religious leaders are there to challenge him. I'm like, what are y'all doing out in the wilderness? Like,
yeah, you came all the way here.
It says all these people had lined up to be baptized. So there are other people who have found the remnant happening in the wild place.
That's the danger. That's why radical love is dangerous.
Yeah.
Because if people get off of the system and onto this verb love thing, then the vampires can't they need your presence. They need you there. They need you put your money into that, your energy into that, your time, your focus. They need that, or else this thing will just become an empty husk. It'll become like the Parthenon, right? So always, like what we're doing right now is dangerous. I guarantee you we're on lists. We were already, but now
I know I'm on a list at Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama. And I'm banned from leadership or any kind of public role at Samford University.
And Jim Barnett's the one that taught me all of this.
I know. Seriously, Jim Barnett would be banned from Samford now. The person who took his role is a disgrace. And I've written him to say, may your sleep be disrupted. May you not be able to sleep at night because of the hate you were spewing on that campus. So put me on some lists. That's great. Put me on a list for loving too much. It's just amazing. The people have said to me, you welcome too many people.
Yep.
Your welcome is too broad.
That's what I loved about Baptist Church of the Covenant.
Yeah.
When my ex-wife was like, pressure me to go to church, I was like, okay, you're on. You find me a church where we could go interracial, Birmingham, Alabama, not married, buying the house together, and I'll go. And Greg O'Barr goes, well, you can come to my church.
I know. I'll raise you one HIV positive drag queen with a feather in his hat. Singing
and
in
I
the
was
choir.
just like,
yeah.
And we immediately laughed at it. We said, a real church, not whatever Fruit Loops church that you go to that would probably get burned down if they realized you were calling it a real church. He goes, well, it's a Baptist church. And I'm a deacon. And we were like, do they know you're gay? He goes, yes. And now I'm like,
man, and at that point it was a Southern Baptist church too.
Yes, because Polly and some people were still a member of the Southern Baptist Convention.
That's right.
And so I was like, well, I got to see this. And then I meet Roger Lovett, and I meet you and Bart Grooms and Morgan Ponder and Marvin and Ricky.
Oh, great. Oh, you're naming all the good names. You and I were texting about Brian Vaughn.
Oh my God.
Still kicking. He's still all over Facebook. If you ever miss him, you can go find him there.
I got back onto Facebook just to talk to this one guy who's an expert on ancient Egypt. And so I'm going to find him because that one year that I chaperoned the kids at church camp, Brian went, and there was another guy. What was his name? Oh, I should be shot for not knowing. It'll come back to me. But I just remember Brian freaking out the night before because he had just got his nipples pierced with these thick, they were little nipple rings, but they were really thick. And he couldn't get them out. He's like tugging on this thing so hard. I'm like looking through my fingers, like, dude, you're just going to break. It's just going to pull out. And he's got that Southern accent. Well, my God, I just can't go in there with these nipple rings showing. And we won the volleyball game. I remember that. He was like, it was
That's so great.
Oh,
I remember, I know this is a tangent. We'll circle back to other stuff, but I remember he took care of his grandmother, right? Until she died. And she had pretty severe Alzheimer's towards the end. And she would start telling dirty limericks. And he would know, like, as soon as she started down that path, he'd be like, no, Grandma, like, I gotta shut you down.
Well, he was one of the pivotal people for me because, for people that don't know, Baptist Church of the Covenant started in 1971 when a black woman tried to join. They wouldn't let her join, and the pastor took 300 to 350 people and left and started the church that we now know as Baptist Church of the Covenant, and it stayed downtown. And so then you fast forward all these years when I got there in 94, 93, 4, somewhere in there. There's all these gay people because they're like, so we're going to let the blacks in, but not, we're going to keep the gays out? Like, what are we doing? Like either.
Well, and a big thing that was part of the 90s identity for Covenant was Malcolm Marler had developed these care teams. So for people who who were living with HIV and AIDS and did not have family caring for them, because often there was, that religious rejection that was happening, then Covenant became part of this network of creating care teams for people. And it's like that Mary Lou Kanaki quote, there isn't anyone you couldn't love once you know their story.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, what started happening was people are taking meals and buying groceries and caring for people, and then they become part of the church, and that whole place was transformed.
And that's why it goes to show that it can be done. It's just rare.
Yeah.
It can be done. Yeah. I gave like probably 30 grand a year to that church.
Wow.
But I could decide where it went. I could go, it's going to go to the sandwiches, it's going to go to this, and it's going to go to that. Like, I could decide.
Yeah.
I don't think you get to do that in a lot of churches.
That's true. Yeah.
But and I went to a Wednesday night meeting, and they were just like kind of fight. They had a fight over whether the pastor could get a new cell phone because cell phones were kind of a new thing back then.
Well, and Roger was rubbing some people the wrong way, as I remember it.
Which, if you're doing it right, you're gonna.
Yeah.
The church always turns on its pastor. We know this. Cain killed Abel. It's on page 1. We know how it goes, right? But I remember me and someone else, I think it might have been Ricky or Marvin, I was like, I will get the cell phone if we could just move on.
Can we just stop talking about this?
From this? Yeah, like I tried to come to Wednesday night meeting and get more involved, and I'm like, is this what we're doing now for real? Yeah. Like, I got the cell phone. Next! Like, it was so crazy. But I still think they did it better than most because, like you said, a need was there, and they started the care teams, and then out of that, it just happened organically.
Yeah, and I fully agree with you that it's funny, as I was leaving that church to go to seminary, a retired seminary professor said to me, "You're doing all of this backwards. You're leaving the best church you'll ever serve. And you're just going to go downhill." Oh, great. Good. Thank you so much.
But you go waste all that money if you would.
I've stayed connected with that community in a way that I haven't with any of the other churches I served. And I went and led they still do that beach retreat in Panama City every year at that same dirty little place that they've been going for like 30 something years. And Oteil, it was the queerest group of people. And it's beautiful. Like it's all these families, just children everywhere. And that church has continued to just have radical welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
because
I
they
really
baked
do. I
it.
do believe in them. I don't want to be their pastor, but I believe in them.
No,
And
but they
I want to,
baked. Go ahead.
no, that's all. Like, those are people to keep in your corner and who are going to be part of the revolution, who want to continue to spread. And they really strategically chose not to grow and grow and grow a building
Yes.
so that
Yes.
wouldn't be where their fidelity was.
It should be going out.
Mhm.
It should be passing through the church and going out to the least of us, right?
Yeah.
Those are the least means. And that, I just got to shout out Jim Barnett and his dad, who was a rock star of the Southern Baptist Convention back in the probably maybe even late 50s and early 60s, and came out with Martin Luther King publicly.
Yeah.
And they got all the bomb threats and death threats, and Birmingham was called Bombingham back then, so it was a real thing. And Jim Barnett is the one that taught me theology. And he never, whenever I had a question, he would go, "Why don't you check out this book and read it, and then you tell me what you think. Tell me what you get out of it." And he also is a believer in that thing that Victor Wooten says, better to have a question that can't be answered than an answer that can't be questioned.
That's everything right there. Yeah.
Everything, man. And that was Jim Barnett, and that was his dad. And thank you, Jim. He died way too early.
He did.
And he married Jess and I. And I could go teach a Bible study at any church anywhere because of him. And I never been to a day of seminary. And I don't say that as an arrogant thing. I just say I loved the research. I loved the quest.
Yeah.
And he's the one that showed me that it is the seeking of God. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's it. It's the whole thing. Do you give a shit?
Yeah.
It's the seeking of love.
Yeah. Is your heart open? Are you curious? Are you chasing after it?
Do you need it? Do you need to know? Do you have to have? I want to know why. How did this get off track? It got off track right here. Why the burning cross? Why? Turns out because of Constantine.
Yeah.
He had the dream of the burning cross. And the voice said to him, "By this sign, you will conquer." And he woke up and he went, "Stop persecuting the Christians. In fact, we're going to make it the state religion, and we're going to put the cross on the flag, and then we're going to go commit mass murder." That's where it got off.
And then I began teaching that the most central high holy day of Christianity should be Maundy Thursday, or Holy Thursday, depending on your tradition. And that is the holiday on which we talk about Jesus washing the disciples' feet. And the story is that he washed all of their feet, even the one who would betray him. And then he ends this teaching by saying, "They will know you are disciples because of the love you have for one another."
That's it. Because they asked him, "How are we supposed to know?" When he tells the parable of the sheep and the goats. And the goats cried, "But we cried, 'Lord, Lord.'" And he said, "Depart from me. I do not know you."
Yeah.
They said, "Well, how are we supposed to know?" Right?
Yeah. And then part of what's important about that text too is that all of that is in plural. So that's when I say Southerners need to teach the Bible, because it's all y'all. All y'all. Like I'll know who y'all are, because y'all are going to be the ones who either fed somebody who was hungry and gave water to somebody who was thirsty and went to prison and busted him out. You welcomed the stranger who was at your southern border and was crying and asking for help, or y'all are going to be the ones who hardened your hearts and said, I didn't. And so like all that brings up so much emotion in me, because my heart is broken.
Yes.
That people who taught me those stories don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like, so I was the kid in church, and I'm not picking on certainly not my sweet pastor growing up or any of them, but the institution said, okay, learn these stories, memorize these stories, sing the songs about these stories, and it gets into your cells and it becomes part of your DNA. And then the institution says, ooh, you're sounding pretty radical there. That love stuff sounds pretty crazy and hippy dippy.
Don't you go being too much like Jesus now.
Yeah. Don't you go get yourself killed on that cross.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's you're so right. And again, that's tracing that thread back again. Like, what is the thread of, like, they will know who we are because we conquer them. They will know who we are because we threaten you either convert or die.
Yeah. Or and he predicted it all.
Yeah.
He said it. I was like, why are you getting the trick that what Satan wants you to do is not read the story.
Mm.
Read the story. It's been translated. All of them got their skin peeled off and burnt at the stake for doing it too. Christians got killed by the church for translating the Bible.
Yeah.
So that everybody could read it.
Well, and
y'all go
the
look
danger
that
of printing it. Like, what happens when you print it? Well, and so then enslaved people in America want to have access to this Bible that they are now being born into this culture. And so, like, okay, we'll give you a Bible. We're going to cut all the parts out about enslaved people who rise up against Pharaoh or Caesar. Like, we're only going to leave the parts about, like, Philemon, who gets taken back to his master. And the slave Bible is born. Like, you can see copies of it where all that revolutionary stuff literally gets cut out.
Yeah. But you can't keep people down. Somebody's going to learn to read. Somebody's going to get a hold of all the parts that got cut out.
Yeah.
And then they're going to be like, hey, man, this is some bullshit.
Yeah. And then you're going to come across somebody who's like, oh, that story sounds a lot like the one of this curious monkey that I know. It's like, what was Hanuman Monster like chasing after that ring? I don't know all the Hindu stories.
But the thing is, that's how the slaves syncretized all their voodoo pantheon with the saints. Because the saints did it on top of the African original thing anyway.
Yeah.
Why do you think there's 12 of everything?
Mm.
Herodotus, the father of history in Greece, the father of history, he said all the 12 Greek gods came from Egypt. And he said the Egyptians and the Ethiopians were all black people, and they come from the south, from Nubia and Ethiopia. Right?
Yeah.
It's written in there that the Ethiopians taught the Greeks how to perform a proper Olympics while kicking their fucking asses at it. Right? People don't know. I'm like, man, you pay all that money for college. That's right in there. And they're just like not telling you. Or they skipped over that part, right? So, but there's still that chord there, and it goes all the way back to the Book of J, all the way back to, have you ever heard this cat, Harold Bloom? He's a Jewish scholar. You know the documentary Hypothesis, where
okay.
The 4 different writers and the redactor.
Oh yeah, like the JDEP stuff. Yeah,
yes, right. So
you're testing my like 2003 intro to Hebrew scripture. Okay.
But this is like why this is my journey with Jim. Why this? Here, read this book, Who Wrote the Bible by Richard Elliott Friedman. Okay. So then we find out there's these 4 stories and there's a redactor because the Jewish people are in different places and some of them are at war with each other and they're trying to get everybody back together. So they took everybody's story and spliced them all together.
Yeah.
And you find these doubling things like in the book of Joshua, which is the whole reason that I've asked him this question. I said, it says right here, God says, I'm going to go in, tells Joshua, I'm going to go in to Israel. I'm going to clean it out, plague, whatever, famine. And then you just go in. It's going to be empty. And then the very next line, he tells Joshua to kill everybody, all the men, all the women, all the animals, all the crops, burn down all the houses. Like, wow, this is like past genocide.
Yeah.
And so Jim goes, yes, that's called Cherem, Cherem. I know I've mentioned this on another podcast, but still, you should hear it again. This is past genocide, right? Why? You should get this book, Who Wrote the Bible, Oteil. Okay. And they found this doubling. Well, if you pull them apart, the stories read down just fine
Yeah.
separately. Well, one's the angry God, never uses the words forgiveness, never even uses the words mercy, or rarely. And then there's, so they each have an angle. The priest is P, right?
Yeah.
D is the Deuteronomist.
Yeah.
Well, the book of J, that's the oldest one. And
Yeah.
Harold Bloom thinks it might have been written by a woman.
Hmm. And so is J standing for the Yahwist in that one?
I believe
Does
so.
it matter? Or that would have been using Jehovah.
Yes.
Okay. Deuteronomist, the Elo. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But um but think about it. In such a hyper patriarchal religion, how come you're only Jewish if your mom's Jewish?
Mm.
So you can't get past that root, like the whole Genesis 1:26-27 thing. We made Adam like us. Who's us? Male and
Yeah.
female.
Male
Oh,
and
so there's
female,
a
we
male.
created them. Yeah.
We made there, so there's a male and female. God is God the mother right there, page 1. The way I read it, my interpretation. So
Yeah.
that's just, maybe I have the devil's interpretation. But you can trace this chord. There's the merciful God. Oh, this might have been written by a woman. Oh, there's where we see God the mother. Oh, there's where, you know,
And then I think where a lot of people, I'm mindful of time. You've got to go get kids from school.
it's
But
okay. You'll hear them.
oh, and that I just talked myself out of a thought. So some people will be really threatened by, you can't start picking scripture apart like that. It's either literally true or it's not true at all.
Oh, well,
And that's and you can't begin to understand a biblical text or anybody's sacred text if you can't ask questions of it, if you can't ask about historical context. And often when you begin to ask questions about historical context, that's when it becomes really radical. Because then you
yes.
understand, oh, this is trying to make a statement about how these people understood divinity against the Mesopotamian stories or against the Babylonian stories,
Yes.
or that it's more conversation, but it's a conversation that we've lost the partners along the way. And yeah, and when you merge all those stories together, then you also end up with something that doesn't make a lot of sense, and you're told you're not supposed to question it. Like, why are there two creation stories? Why are there multiple tellings of the Ten Commandments? Which one is true? Well, maybe that's the wrong question.
Yeah. It's about the right questions.
Yeah.
It's not about the answers.
Yeah.
Always.
And getting to a better question, like refining
Yes.
those questions so that you're asking better and better ones. And not just for the sake of poking holes, but for the sake of like expanding, opening, heart growing,
No,
more compassion and empathy for yourself and for your neighbor.
I will never begrudge anybody a sincere desire to, in whatever it is, like about abortion, you know? I will never begrudge anyone that's is deeply upset by that. I was responsible for one. I have it hanging over my head forever. So I know I will never be responsible. That's how I do it.
Yeah.
If you're against it, make sure you never have one. Right? That's period. It's not about controlling someone else for me, but I'm against it. You know?
Well, and
For
I would also
me,
like this
not
is
for
when
other people.
this is when moral consistency also really matters. Like, so you are so in favor and support of life, then like how will you continue to radically and robustly
Yeah.
support life in all its forms? You know,
Yes.
how are you radically and robustly against the death penalty and
Exactly.
full
War.
humanization of people who have been locked away in Angola prison in Louisiana for all of their lifetime since they were 15 years old. So it's the moral consistency I want to hear. Again, like a thread through your own life. And God knows not to say that I'm the most consistent person or that I have even begun to figure things out, but I hope that's where I'm growing in my life. Like holding fewer and fewer things as capital T truth, but being more deeply committed to them as I age and grow.
Yes. Because, you know, if you were raped by your uncle,
Yeah.
now there's a really good chance the baby's going to be messed up.
Yeah.
Like, aside from the rape part,
Yeah.
you take those two things. I ain't making that decision. That's her decision on that
Yeah.
one. And screw anybody else that tries to make that you can go
Yeah.
straight to hell as far as I'm concerned. I would never judge for anyone else on that.
Yeah.
But, the way mine happened was preventable and shouldn't have happened. If I had listened to my parents, it wouldn't have. And it will forever be a black whatever. It's
And
whatever
also,
punishment I get, I deserve for it.
let's be gracious here also. How many of us have some kind of story, if not a dozen
Yeah,
or
I know.
more, of
I know.
I wish I had listened, or I wish I had not gone down this path, or I wish I had made a different choice. And so,
Yeah.
yes, and
Yeah.
that's,
And I've
you know better, now you do better, right? Like you learn
yeah,
and you grow and you commit yourself to, and maybe you do feel like you got to make some amends for the rest of your life. I don't know.
I
Um,
certainly do. And I mean, and I also believe in grace because I used to say Kirk West, God bless him, he used to say, being the only believer in the Allman Brothers band was quite a journey. Uh, they knew me before and knew me afterwards, and they like me better afterwards.
mm,
Across the board. Across the board. And I forget what the context was that Kirk said something about, uh, when you do wrong shit too, I go, yeah, but at least I feel bad about it.
yeah. Isn't
The
that
capacity
something?
to feel bad and shame and guilt is a gift. It's how there's still something worth forgiving
Oof.
inside of you.
And then now we're back to Ram Dass's altar with 45th president right there in the middle. Yeah, like the
Yep.
capacity to own your mistakes and say, I am fallible and flawed and I screwed up and I want to make it right. And
Because when I go to my kids' school and you see all these little elves, oh my God, they're so darling. And I always go, one of them was Hitler. One of them
oof,
was Stalin. One of them was Genghis Khan. One of them, we can go down the line. Trump he ain't shit compared to
yeah,
Stalin. Let's get fucking real for a second. Sorry, Nigel
yeah,
and all your friends. But let's get real. Come on.
yeah,
There's scales. There's levels to this game.
yeah. Stormy Daniels is not exactly the same as like total annihilation of a people. Yeah.
Stop 20 million people?
Yeah. I mean, I
20
might say he's
million?
not Benjamin Netanyahu, but yeah.
But at a certain point, each of those people was this perfect child.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what happened. It's like the quote you said, you would, if you knew enough, and that's why God says, you let me do the judging. You don't, only I know everything that led to them to here.
Well, and that's what we don't have enough time. We never have enough time.
No, we're
But
going to
that's
come back.
when you start going down the Harry Potter stories of holding up these two children who've had these dark and painful childhoods, and how do you have one who grows in one direction and one who grows in the other,
Tom
and
Riddle and
that the
Ryan.
whole story comes back to this one child was so marked by love that it protected him.
Just like it does us.
Yeah.
And here my kids come.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I recently discovered why Harry Potter means so much to me. Hogwarts. My family has a coat of arms. It's a wild boar.
Oh, wow.
Hogwarts. And when you look in the school, there's that huge statue of that wild boar. That's what it is, man.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I was like, that's why I connect with it. So I don't feel any guilt. Y'all can laugh at me if you want to. I don't care. And I also realized I'm part Slytherin too, as you wear the green.
100%. I would think I'm part Slytherin, part Ravenclaw is my guess.
Here's my wand. It's the cobra with the
That's
skull. I
awesome.
thought it was a Death Eater's wand, but it's not. It's the original wand that whatever the original wand made it her mate. because I thought, oh, there's the cobra for ancient Egypt
wow.
and the skull for the Grateful Dead. I was like, that's my wand. It's a
That's
bad
really cool.
mofo too. All right, I gotta go. I love you so much,
I
Elizabeth.
love you. Thanks for texting me.
We're gonna do this again. We're gonna have
Okay.
part 2 and 3, and maybe it's gonna be an ongoing thing because the new religion's coming down the pike, and it's not gonna. We're all gonna be Team Jesus. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love Jesus? As Christians, we all got a problem with. Right?
Man, that's a good note to end on right there.
Much love to you, sister.
Love you much. Hook me
All
up
right.
in bacon, okay?
Oh man. Oh, I got you, girl.